No, I know what you're thinking. How could I betray my own kind with that title? Us gamers, the only community on earth that matters, need to stand together against this tide of wokeness that has swept the world. How dare I make a video claiming that this clearly liberal propaganda piece isn't exactly that? That the reason it's not good is that it's just not good? Well, sorry to disappoint, I guess, but it is what it is. If you still need to get your rocks off, you can still go watch The Critical Drinker, because I'm sure he has a video calling it woke. There are many reasons why Season 2 of Fallout isn't hitting as hard as Season 1. The mystery isn't there, the sense of adventure is gone, replaced by cheap shock value and some decent CGI, and so far, the factions of Fallout that everyone was so looking forward to in this season have disappointed completely. And as someone who hasn't played through Fallout New Vegas yet, I know, I was born late, okay? I was 10 when this game came out, and like I've already mentioned in other videos, I was too stupid to buy land or Bitcoin. So not only was I a child, I was also guilty of being poor. I know it's no excuse, but I hope you'll find it in your massive hearts to forgive me. When I was released from poor jail, I tried running Fallout New Vegas a bunch of times on a more modern machine, and I guess it must not have been notified that my tax bracket had changed because the game kept crashing on me. No, but seriously though, this game has been a bitch to try and play, even with the Vivala New Vegas mod set. Mostly though, it's probably because the game still thinks I'm poor. Anyway, because I didn't play the game, I don't have that gamer desire or urge to go,
Whoa. Here I come.
and let's be honest here, video game adaptations are generally just
Here I come.
fests without any merit of their own and are expected to be sold as such. The Fallout TV series was a very nice change of pace. It was supposed to break the mold. And for the first season, it really did, but it all goes also wrong in the second one. The second season starts out exactly where the first one left us, with Cooper Howard and Lucy McLean tailing her dad so Coop can find out where his family is and Lucy can exact justice upon her father for nuking a city. At the start of the second season, they're caught up in some elaborate plot to swindle resources out of one of the factions I mentioned, the Great Khans. Now, they call it the Great Khans, but it's actually pronounced, it's pronounced the Great Khans, but I understand you guys don't have the vocal capacity to go, so Khans it is. The plan, and I'm using that term loosely here, we'll come to see why in a second, is that Coop lets himself get caught so Lucy can ambush them while they have their guard down, only Lucy doesn't shoot. She tries to talk it out with the people she just scammed for a lot of resources in return for Coop, because the Great Khans really hate Coop, and she tries to convince them to not only let Coop go, but also let her keep those resources that she traded for Coop. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think that is brain dead levels of stupid, you are absolutely right. That goes about as well as you'd expect, and they end up in a firefight where Coop just kills everyone anyway. One question: if Coop can just shoot and kill everyone anyway, why the elaborate plan? Isn't that wasting precious time? I guess you could say that Coop is trying to get Lucy to turn into him by making her more cynical, and getting her to help him murder all these people furthers that goal, but is he really willing to sacrifice precious time he could be spending chasing information about his family? Which is the entire reason he's doing this anyway, just so he can play this sadistic little game. Now, giving the writers the benefit of the doubt, maybe the gang had to wait on the resource, in which case Coop and Lucy would have to wait too. But then why wouldn't you just kill them as soon as the resources arrive, or ambush the transport wagon? Anything but what you did. This was retarded. I don't know, maybe Coop gets off on having his head almost scored by a barbed wire noose, but we move on. Coop and Lucy murder the gang, keep tracking her dad, and they end up in a vault, and get this, that turns people into communists. I'm not joking. Do not ask me why this is a thing, but it is canon. Lucy's father, Hank McLean, ends up in a Vault-Tec factory of some sort by himself, trying to iron out the final kinks in a mind control device. The kinks being that it makes the subject's head explode. Back at Vaults 32 and 33, they're having incest PTSD meetings, which is the only good part of this episode. And that is it for episode 1, season 2 of Fallout. Now, when this came out, I have to admit that I wasn't terribly impressed, but I didn't have the deathly gut feeling about a show that I do now after 4 episodes. That classic, when the show you like gets a season 2, 3, or 4, you view the first few episodes and you just get that, look how they massacred my boy feeling, you know? I did feel a slight sense of dread because of how weak the episode was, but I thought to myself, hey, but this weekend opening, it can only get better from here, right? Episode 2 starts in an older Shady Sands before it started cosplaying Hiroshima. A couple living in Shady Sands discovers how to de-radiate water. This, by the way, is a huge discovery. Portable drinking water is extremely rare, and this would have revolutionized the Mojave Wasteland, but Lucy's dad sends them a present and boom goes everything. And what's this? The couple who invented the de-ratify the water machine are actually Maximus's parents. Oh my god, I'm gonna pretend to be interested. The scene sort of works because we know Maximus, but it fails to be as effective as they want it to be because we don't know the town. This isn't Salem's Lot. Maximus's parents lock him up in the only fridge they have and try to tank the nuke hit themselves. That obviously doesn't work, they get slimed out. Back in the present, grown-up Maximus is doing some sliming out of his own, ghouls. He's recovering another relic on Quintus's orders. Once he recovers that hard drive from the Stoner looking ass device, it's revealed that now they have infinite energy. They can generate infinite fusion cores. Fusion cores, if you don't know, are portable nuclear batteries. So yeah, pretty useful. With this power, Quintus plans to incite a civil war by uniting all chapters of the Brotherhood against the Commonwealth, which apparently is the big daddy of the scattered chapters of the Brotherhood that issues all the orders. So he calls over all the leaders of the different chapters and shows off his new toy. They get all bright-eyed and agree to help, but just then, an emissary from the Commonwealth shows up, halting their plans, for now. Meanwhile, Lucy McLean and Cooper Howard end up finding a few wounded survivors in a building, with Coop unusually unsympathetic to their afflictions. I wonder why. He even goes so far as to kill one of them. He ends up fighting a giant scorpion in the building, getting stung and getting left behind by Lucy, while she transports the survivor back to camp. When she gets to the camp, we find out why Coop didn't give a fuck about these folks. It just so happens that they're a bunch of weirdos that wear Roman armor and wield AKs. They are the worst kind of LARPers, really. But how bad could they be? They kill the woman Lucy was with immediately and then take Lucy hostage. Back in New Vegas, Hank is having very little to no success in this mind control device experiments on rats, so he starts defrosting people who bought VIP tickets to cry sleep in Vault-Tec. Back in the control vault, Norm McLean spins the block on the talking vacuum cleaner and defrosts all of Buzz's buds, that is, people who were supposed to take over the vaults as overseers. Norm tells them that they're locked in here, that getting out of here is a test, and that he's assigned to be leading the group. You can physically see the sheep panic ease a little when they realize that there is a shepherd, or at least when they think there is one. That little funny bit was unfortunately the only redeeming quality of this episode. At the end of episode 2, my fears and suspicions deepened. And that sense of dread that I'm familiar with creeped closer to my heart. But I still held out hope. Hope that it can all be improved. Hope that was just a slow start, and with the grace of Todd, it was gonna be alright. That's when the third episode hit. It's Thaddeus, the Brotherhood member that got turned into a ghoul by a shady doctor last season. His fortunes have improved significantly and he's running a child labor camp now. Their motto is, "It could always be worse," which, to be fair, is true out in the wilderness. Lucy, all this time, is tied to a TV pole doubling as a wooden cross and literally left to dry, which, while being brutal, you have to admit is kind of funny. Not if you're the guy/girl being left to dry, obviously you're gonna die a brutal, slow, horrible death, but to the YouTuber who's making a YouTube video about it from the comfort of his own room. It is kind of funny. In the building with a giant scorpion corpse, Coop digs the venom out of his leg with a dagger and sets out to free Lucy because apparently he needs her for something. At the Brotherhood, Quintus is in a bit of a pickle because the arrival of the Commonwealth emissary means that the Commonwealth is aware of their plot for a civil war, which has given all the leader of the chapters he's invited extremely cold feet. Apparently, the Commonwealth isn't Big Daddy for no reason. They also carry the largest stick. Coop, against his better judgment, decides to help free Lucy. They have an entire legion down there though, so he heads out to find some old friends for help. Only it turns out, there's not much of the NCR left, just a couple rangers who could only serve as fodder. So he gets back to the camp all by himself, lights a delayed fuse onto a massive keg unnoticed, and makes a deal with one of the Caesars. Oh yeah, old Caesar died, so now there's 2 Caesars. Legions, each of them with their own chief claiming control of all of them. When Coop gets Lucy out, the keg blows and the 2 legions just start killing each other because they obviously think the other one is wrong. It was a powder keg literally waiting for a spark to go off. It was clever, I liked it. Not enough to save the episode though. The emissary from the Commonwealth, Xander, tries to make buddies with Maximus. Give him the whole, "we're just 2 guys fighting on opposite sides" spiel. He takes him out hunting and guess who they discover? Why isn't it Thaddeus and his child labor factory? Xander smiles at the sight of so many ghoul children ripe for the slaughter. clearly thinks different is different, children or not, but Maximus disagrees because he literally smashes his head in. He also tells Thaddeus to get into the working power armor so people don't find out that the Commonwealth emissary is dead and it doesn't start a war. On a side note, it's very funny to me that the guy with the child labor factory is the good guy in this situation. At the end of this episode, I was feeling dread and boredom in equal amounts. My hope had been crushed for the most part, but the cope was still very much alive, for it is not so easy to kill. I was still coping, telling myself that it's okay, it's gonna get better. Next episode. It did not. Episode 4 opens with an old battle, way back when Coop was still a Marine in the US Army and was fighting off the Reds in Alaska. The Reds, by the way, are just Chinese communists. Coop and his unit were tasked with pushing back the Reds. Slight problem, the T-45 power armor they were wearing was a real piece of shit and barely worked. Coop asked his subordinate to turn back against orders and decided to keep going himself. In this age-old process of fucking around, he does find out he gets ambushed by a bunch of Chinese soldiers who get ambushed by a Deathclaw. You might have guessed from the name, but a Deathclaw is not to be trifled with. It is not good news. It makes minced meat of the Chinese soldiers pretty quick, and it smells Coop and just lets him go. Interesting, isn't it? Hopefully you make something of that. Back in the present again, Coop takes a very weak Lucy to the NCR outpost to get some meds and recover. Turns out, these people were residents of Shady Sands before Lucy's dad decided to play the old-fashioned US game of bombing innocent civilians. If only they knew who they were treating, but they don't, and even Lucy isn't stupid enough to tell them, so they make it out of there without a confrontation. It just so happens though that the drug Lucy took to heal up so fast happens to be addictive. Now, she can beat the addiction by going through a withdrawal which could take 4 or 5 days according to Coop, and which they don't have time for. So she just keeps taking more drugs. Lucy is high as fuck when she enters New Vegas premises with Coop. She's shooting ghouls, she's smiling, and she's having fun, that is, until they're confronted with a Deathclaw. Back with Maximus, and his new brilliant plan is to kill Quintus to avoid all-out war. This goes as well as you'd expect, and Maximus just can't pull the trigger. Or what? You can't kill your father figure in cold blood, you fucking pussy. I miss when men used to be men, and not gay little femboys like Maximus over here. A fight breaks out and the chapter leaders start killing each other because Thaddeus, the child labor camp manager, doesn't have a career in acting. Maximus's friend hands him the infinite energy gizmo and he gets the fuck out of there. Back in Vault 32, the overseer's husband discovers her ID before the war times from Canada. And I understand how grave a sin being a Canadian is, so I decided to include this plotline for this episode, but it is really dull. The end of the 4th episode coincidentally also happens to be the end of Cope for me. This series is almost halfway finished, and it is hot garbage. Will it improve? Who knows? The Deathclaw fight should be sick at least. I'll get you a rundown of that when it happens, alright? Until next time, which is soon hopefully, goodbye.